Coming up in today's episode, this is a shout out to your men. This is a call if you are men, if you have ever worked with a man, if you know a man, if you work in a team with a man. This is a call if you have a father, if you are a father, if you have sons. This is a quest, a call, a movement into action to better include men within mental health services. And I am joined by a consultant psychiatrist as we talk about how to better engage men and be the difference that makes the difference for men in mental health, to make life feel like it's worth living. Hope you'll find it so useful. Please do share this content far and wide.
If you're looking to become a psychologist, then let this be your guide. With this podcast at your side, you'll be on your way to being qualified. It's the Aspiring Psychologist podcast with Dr. Marianne, Trent.
Hi, welcome along to the Aspiring Psychologist podcast. I am Dr. Marianne Trent and I'm a qualified clinical psychologist. I like to introduce you to interesting themes and debates in psychology. And today's is going to be a really powerful episode. I am joined by a consultant psychiatrist today, which is a little bit different, but I hope that whatever discipline you are as you listen to this, and you may not work in mental health at all, you might actually be someone that might find the content in this podcast really empowering and maybe just life-changing. We are talking about all things male. How can we better engage men in mental health services? How can we de-shame? How can we have better results and give more hope? It was such a pleasure to speak to my guest today, and I hope that you find it to be just the most nourishing, interesting, thought-provoking episode like I did. I will look forward to catching up with you on the other side of this. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome to the podcast today Dr. T. Ayodele Ajayi. Hi.
Good. Hi, it's nice to be here, and thank you for having me on the podcast.
Oh, thank you for saying yes. We crossed paths on LinkedIn. I think originally you'd started commenting on some of my 4-minute clinics, and then I started commenting on your stuff. And then it just got to the stage where we're having big, long conversations in the chat. And I was like, maybe we should actually have a podcast episode to discuss this.
Yeah. So it's amazing how many connections you make on LinkedIn, or I particularly like LinkedIn because of the professional conversations, and it's really a very interesting place where people have regard for each other. So it's one of my preferred social media platforms for that reason.
Me too. I do love the random chats you can have, but I love that you so effortlessly rub up against different disciplines. So you, for example, are a psychiatrist, and I love seeing where we might have shared ground, where we might be able to learn things about each other's profession, and potentially what you can do together, such as this. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Right. So I'm a consultant psychiatrist, and I work in the southeast of England, in the east of Kent. And I've been in psychiatry. I started my psychiatry training about 23 years ago. Also, I do run a tripart care emotional wellbeing hub, which is an online safe, sensitive space for people of Black ethnic minority and faith communities to come together and look at mental health in a way that is non-threatening, and in a way where we can encourage open conversations and sort of normalize things, that it's okay not to be okay, and to have these conversations in a healthy way.
Yeah, such important conversations to have. And we're recording this in November, and this is likely to be going out in January. But I really like the stuff that you were talking during men's mental health awareness campaigns in November about kind of wanting to encourage men specifically to talk and to de-shame the process of having feelings, you know, because we are human. It's such important stuff to do.
Absolutely. Yeah. I couldn't agree with you more. And my interaction with men over, I think more intensively over the last 3 years, has shown that it's not, that stereotype is actually a stereotype that men don't talk about their emotions. I found it not to be true. What I'm finding is that men actually, like women, like everyone else, have emotions, but we only let down our guards when we feel safe. And I think it's really the onus is on society to begin to challenge those stereotypes about men don't talk, because it's very difficult to beat stereotypes, isn't it? You feel boxed in, and when you're when you're the outlier, it feels like swimming against the tide. So if society believes that men should not express emotions, is not okay, is a sign of weakness. For you to then be the man who comes forward and begins to talk emotions can be quite daunting. And that's what I'm hearing from men, really, which is interesting.
It really is. And I am the mother of 2 young boys, but I also have an older brother. He's 17 months older than me, so not massively
Oh,
older. But
nice.
it's interesting for me to be able to kind of compare and contrast the differences that I've observed from being the sister of a brother, and then being the mother of 2 boys whilst also being a psychologist.
Yeah,
Um, Absolutely, we are empowering our young men these days
absolutely.
to talk about emotions, to tap into their feelings. But
Yeah,
this is not easy, I think, certainly for our generation, because it wasn't the way that we've been schooled. We're almost having to learn with them as well. Has that been your experiences too?
absolutely. I couldn't agree more on that. That there's such a generational gap in terms of emotions and in terms of men being in touch with emotions. I think the older generation, the boomers, don't even do emotions at all. And interestingly, that's striking because the suicide figures, for instance, 3 out of 4 men dying by suicide in the UK, and the highest age group is the 50 to 59 among men. So that's telling us something, isn't it, about really what's the link between how we feel comfortable about speaking about our emotions and then taking it out on ourselves and then ending up taking our lives. It's just something to think about. Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. Uh,
I do hope that we are experiencing a bit of a wave of change, though. For example, I don't know if you saw my post on LinkedIn the other day about what if we were all as emotionally sophisticated as the average modern 7-year-old. So as I was on my way home from school with
yes.
my 7-year-old, he started telling me about someone in his class that was basically trying to get him to be her boyfriend, and he didn't want that. He didn't want that, and she was kind of trying to manipulate him and saying, "Well, I'll invite you to my party if you'll come, if you'll just be my boyfriend for a day, you
Oh,
know,
wow.
I'll invite you to my party." And in the end, he basically called her out for gaslighting, like,
Oh, wow.
you know, and said, "I don't, this is not okay. You can't do this to me. I've said no. And then was able to not only do that in the moment, but then tell me about it as well. And I'm like, gosh. I think there's change happening.
I think your boys is certainly ahead of the curve. It's probably because it's got the benefit of having been like that, having the benefit of a clinical psychologist mom, um, all these growing years for the last 7 years, which are very crucial years. But I also do agree that I think things are changing. I think my feeling is that the Gen Zs and the millennials are young men are more open to discuss their emotions, but they're also looking for safety. I've found that psychological safety, for better use of a word, in terms of just really having that safe, sensitive space where men don't feel they're going to be criticized or that they're going to be fixed. Because that's the other thing. A man by nature wants to feel that they're the king of their castles, even when the castle is in ruin and when everything is not where it should be. every man still wants to feel like he is in charge. And because men are fixers, what we then have with men, relationship, peer relationship with men, is that as soon as you open your mouth, the other man wants to jump in and tell you the things that you are doing wrong and what you need to fix. And that man is just looking for an outlet. He's not looking for somebody to fix his problems. He knows that he is in trouble. He knows that there are things that need to be done, but he also just wants another peer who is a good listener and who is authentic.
Okay, so one of the key ingredients then for creating that safe space is a little bit less talking, a bit more zipping. It's just kind of to
Absolutely.
hear rather necessarily than to fix.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
there might be, things we can suggest or come up with, but I guess, do you believe in someone's ability to kind of find their way to healing? What's your opinion of that?
So I believe that there are different paths that we find to our recovery journey. That our recovery journeys are different. Everyone's recovery journey is unique. It's based on their probably their childhood experiences, their education, and their exposure, the things that they've been exposed to in the course of their lives, because that's where they pull resources from when it comes to periods of conflict, when it comes to periods of challenges. It's from those places that they draw their resources. So I believe that everyone's unique journey is unique, and that really, even as psychiatrists, as psychologists, as therapists, I think our role is to create a safe space, or sometimes even for coaches and mentors as well, to create a place of safety where people can reflect, because sometimes we live the reality that we live in a busy world, so people can step back and reflect and find their own answers and join their own dots.
Yeah, and as you were talking, it was making me think about the importance of having a really good relationship with your supervisor, because actually a key part of managing this work we do is that safe space. I don't know if you've ever had the experience of being supervised by someone you don't have a good attunement with, but it can really wobble you. It doesn't feel safe. It makes it feel like you're being judged and you're being criticized, that you're not good enough. Whereas there's something really containing about that safe space, even therapeutically, as a professional. And so to be able to create that for our children and create that for our service users and our clients is incredible. We might be doing that for the first time ever, especially if we work with people that have had complex trauma backgrounds. It's a chance to get it right at whatever stage we're working with either a client, a colleague, or a family system.
Yeah. I think psychological safety and having that containment, that space it cannot be overemphasized, as you say, because it's amazing as well what then comes out, the content, the interaction that takes place when people feel safe. Because as you say, I don't even think it's only the supervisee that benefits. I think the supervisor as well benefits from that interaction, because it helps you to feel safe to also admit sometimes your own vulnerabilities, because that's the other issue in terms of really being able to admit that, yes, I'm supervisor, but I'm not the reporter of all knowledge, or that there are things that I'm also going through. There are processes that it's an organic process for me as well.
Yeah. I don't know if you've ever done that exercise, and I'm not going to ask you to give me the answer to this question, but for you to hold in mind where you connect now to the thing that you are most ashamed of. And I'm not going to ask you the answer, but if you just take a moment to just think about what that is, and then you imagine having to tell me it, I'm not going to do it. But, being able to do that, and, the physical sensations that you might feel as you were to imagine that, you might feel squirming, you might start to sweat, you might start to think, oh no, what's she going to think of me, this is going to be awful, it's going to be broadcast everywhere. It's that sense of shame, judgment, criticism, and how it can kind of really kickstart our fight and flight. And that is what we're essentially asking our clients to do, certainly at every new assessment, aren't we? You know, tell a stranger your deepest, darkest thoughts and feelings. But that said, it's not as bad as you imagine when it's done, when it's handled well, is it?
Yes, that's really, I like the way you've described it so graphically, because it just brings it to light. And the interesting thing is, when it's done well, it's amazing how many consultations that I've been in, particularly as I progress and learning the way not to do it and the way to do it. It's amazing how many times I've been in consultations where somebody has said, actually, I've just said to you something that I've never said to anyone else in my whole life. Sometimes it's from a 63-year-old man. Sometimes it's from a 54-year-old man. So, and we are thinking, and that strikes me. I'm thinking, oh wow. So for maybe the maybe 63-year-old man, so he's been conscious about his thoughts and about his well-being maybe for the last 55 or 55 years, and he's been carrying that around. And it just, I think it tells me how much of the safety we can create, and how it can trigger somebody's or set up initiate somebody's recovery process by doing it right. And sometimes people don't engage because they are worried about what they're going to find. People don't want to come to psychiatric consultations. They think it's a almost like a death sentence being referred to a psychiatrist, and because of the fear of the unknown, people don't engage. And of course, what then happens sadly is that outcomes are worse because of because of the delayed intervention.
Yeah, it's such incredibly powerful and privileged stuff to be part of, isn't it? And to be potentially the difference that makes the difference, and to get in there early enough before things spiral. So quite often during a postnatal period, actually, for men can be really tricky after they've become a father for the first time. Perhaps they've, witnessed a traumatic birth. Perhaps they're worried for the life of their partner and their child. And then they've struggled with that for years and years and years. And then kind of meet me when their child's 15, 18, 20, whatever. And we're then processing that birth trauma that's impacted on their ability to parent. It might have impacted on their ability to grandparent, to run their lives. And had we been able to see them at a sooner period, it would have just been liberating for them. And so I absolutely echo what you say about do it now, do it now, because so many times people have said to me, oh, well, I wish I had done this sooner, because actually it wasn't as bad as I thought.
It was going to be. Yeah, it's interesting you say that, in terms of really encouraging anyone who feels that they're at that point in which they're contemplating to just do it now, because that same message is what I hear all the time when people say, oh, actually, I wish I had done it sooner. It's not half as threatening as I expected it to be, but also I didn't expect that it was going to be such a beneficial process, in terms of really the it's like I dreaded coming having these encounters, but now I'm looking forward to it after a few sessions, because I can actually feel that things are changing and moving in the right direction. So do it now is the same message that I will echo to anyone who is contemplating.
And do you know what message I think is now becoming unhelpful about mental health support and therapy and intervention? It's one that I've heard lately quite a lot, is that people are saying to me, well, I know it's going to get worse before it gets better when I'm working with you. And people are like, I didn't do it because I couldn't afford for it to get any worse. But for me, it's like, actually, if we're managing you well and helping you within your window of tolerance, we're not going to do things that are outside of your level of comfortability. So please, if anyone's listening to this thinking I can't afford for it to get worse before it gets better, I don't think that's necessarily what happens. What's your view on that?
I couldn't agree more, because I think that it's important. I think the role of the professional, be it a therapist, the psychiatrist, the clinical psychologist, or the psychotherapist is to create that safety and containment. And I think part of our responsibilities is to help the person who is coming into that session to be able to manage some of the distress that they may feel, whatever it is. So, so part of the offer is to be able to manage the situation, whatever arises in the context of coming to those sessions for the first time. So really, I absolutely agree that it can be very damaging because it could actually, because people don't understand what that means. It's going to get worse before it gets better. How long is a piece of string here? And somebody's already probably dealing with recurrent panic attacks, who are having flashbacks, who are having all of they don't want to, they can't imagine what it's going to be like to be for things to get worse. So really, that's a message that should be very clearly spelled out, rather than just throwing it at it as a cliche. It's going to get worse before it gets better, because we are going to be there to hold anyone's hand when they come into that space. That's probably what we should be saying, I feel.
Maybe we just change it to it's going to get better.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it does get better.
Mm.
And perhaps more people for whom it's got better should really, particularly people who have clout, people who have a platform, people who are celebrities, people who are role models in society, really need to be talking about the fact that yes, it does get better. I took a chance on myself, and I'm glad I did. I think that's also an important message to put out there.
Yeah, and when someone, it's more men who do say this to me actually than women. When somebody says, if I hadn't met you, I would have ended my life, you know, and now I have hope for the future. It's real. It happens. You know, this can transform people's lives and then transform the next generation too.
I like the generational part of what you just mentioned in terms of generation, because really we do know, for instance, that adverse childhood experiences, that we do tend to carry that over. The impact of adverse childhood experiences is generational. That if they are not dealt with, there's research showing that it then becomes generational, in terms of we will then pass that on, those generational trauma, onto our own children, and then they will pass it on to their own children. So really, that's another incentive, particularly for men who are wondering, should I not? Because I know for most men, because of the sense of responsibility that we carry, inflicting damage on the next generation inadvertently is not something that a lot of us will want to do. So that could be another reason, actually, to think that I'm not only doing it for myself, I'm doing it for my children, I'm doing it for my grandchildren, I'm doing it for their own children as well.
Yeah, and I think something that I've certainly experienced when working in areas of deprivation is that people haven't always had their own male parenting experience. And what's been really nice is when there's been males in the community who have kind of stepped up to kind of try to be a positive role model. And I think that's really, really important. What's your experience of that?
So that's I totally agree on that count as well, that the responsibility of males in society, particularly if one is a male who has managed to go through the rite of passage, and you've got some things wrong, but you've also got some things right, and you're now at a place where, for one reason or the other, most people don't choose to be like that, but for some reason, or one reason or the other, people then look up to you. I think it's important to then extend the definition of parenting. So beyond biological relationships, I think there's a responsibility on the men who have managed to go through those rites of passages to look out for young people in your community who might be rootless in terms of they have no roots because there's no father figure in their lives. That's one thing that the Tripart Care Emotional Wellbeing Hub, for instance, looks out for, in terms of that quite a lot of young men through that hub that I've been able to connect with, some of them that I didn't have one-to-one sessions with, in terms of just really helping them to have somebody who is a grounding factor in their lives and who creates a sense of safety to be able to help them to consider things, to reflect, and help them to join their own thoughts without being critical. And yeah.
Such important stuff. So tell us a bit more about the Tripart Care Mind Gym. How did you come to start putting that together?
Yeah, that's quite an interesting question, and the reason is because it was quite a dramatic way. So, just talking about the benefits of social media, because some people knock social media and say, "Oh, it's all rubbish," but there are benefits to social media. We met on social media, for instance. So, my friend, during this just about the time we were entering into the second lockdown, was about September 2020. She puts up a post about another story she's had about holding her son from jumping off from a high-rise building. So they lived in a and that was really. And I read that and I thought, oh my God, I've always been thinking about doing something for young men, particularly from young men who are from ethnic minority backgrounds, and this might be my opportunity. So I sent her an inbox message and say, actually, I read your post and it just feels, sometimes you read something and it just feels like it's so personal. You feel it's almost like destiny is calling my name, like you've got to do something now, do it now. So I sent her a message and said, that really strikes me. And then she gave me the details. And at that point, I then thought, okay, let's put out I was going to put out a post, and I did. I said, please inbox me if you're a parent who has a child who is struggling with mental difficulties at the moment or distress. Let's know if you will be interested in meeting. And that was my opt-out clause. I'm being very transparent here. My thinking was, nobody's going to respond anyway, and then I would have satisfied my conscience. I put out a post out there, nobody responded. And I was inundated with inbox messages. So I knew, okay, now you have to do something. And so we had this first Zoom meeting, February 2021, where people came together and we just said, this is an open session. And the attendance to start with Saturday morning, I was surprised how many people turned up and the stories. So that was when we thought, okay, yes, there's a need here. And that's how it progressed. Yeah. So.
Great. So it's all online, is it?
It's all online. We meet by Zoom, and it's usually the last Thursday of the month, and it's usually from 7 p.m. till 9 p.m.
And is this over 18s? What is there an age spread or a range that you can cater for?
Very interesting question, because when the Zoom session started, it was targeted at 18 to 35-year-olds. But then I began to get messages from parents who said, oh, you are being ageist here. You should really be catering for the parents as well. So these days, what happens is that there's no age restriction, but we then have the gym courses. The gym courses are targeted. So it's a 6 weeks course where we discuss issues of identity. We discuss issues of finding your purpose, having a sense of what am I here for, dealing with issues of depression, stress, anxiety, and all of those. And that's ring fenced for the 18 to 35-year-olds.
And is that 18 to 35 for males, or is that males and females?
Males and females. Yeah,
males and females. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think well done. And I know before we started talking, we were talking about actually this going over and above monetary compensation for the work that we do. This is, in your words, this is like a calling. This is because you really care about alleviating distress in people.
Yeah, that's an interesting conversation we were having, wasn't it? Because I think in order to continue to be a mental professional, there must be, and to do it well, you must see beyond just something that pays the bills. There must be a sense of calling, a sense of purpose, that this is something that I'm cut out to do, and it's also a privilege. It's also a blessing to be able to do it, because I feel that when we see the transformation that that you've eloquently spoken about today, the way people move on in their recovery journey, some men confiding in you that if they hadn't met you, they would have taken their lives. There's no pay packet that can pay for that. I think it's far beyond. So there must be a sense of purpose and calling that drives us and keeps us going.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I have that. I think it's the way I've been raised by my dad, who sadly is no longer with us, but he kind of had the belief that if you can do something for someone, then you should. And I guess I've probably got some of that in myself as well.
Yeah, that's my ethos as well. That if it's a privilege to be able to be in that position. I think sometimes because we live in society where sometimes we're almost programmed by media and by all sorts of messages to make us look at life in the half full or half empty glass view when we are looking at the things that are going wrong. But if you're in a position to be able to do anything, it's a position of privilege and it's a blessing to be able to do that. And I think that's something that we should all do. That's we are the ones that benefit at the end of the day, really, because of
Yeah,
the
it's
fulfillment it
definitely,
gives.
it's a two-way street, isn't it?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Ajayi. It's been really, really lovely speaking with you. Where can people learn more about you and about the Tripart Care Mind Gym?
Right. So, the Tripart Care, we've got a YouTube channel actually by the same name, Tripart Care, and we've got lots of videos on there where people can connect, and of course on LinkedIn. That's where I put most of my thoughts and posts. I'm Dr. Ajayi on LinkedIn. And we've got a website that is still just developing. There's not a lot of content there yet, but also by the same name, Tripart Care.
Thank you. I will make sure that I link in the show notes and with the social posts and stuff so that people can find you easily. But honestly, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. I feel like I could speak to you for days and still not be done. If you had any advice for reducing burnout in the mental health professional sphere, what would that be?
Yeah, if there was any advice, I think it will be that one to make sure that one avails oneself of supervision, having a peer support group, but importantly, having a life outside of work. I think that sometimes as health professionals, it's very easy for our job to become our persona and to become our identity. I think having outlets, something where possibly not even doing it with people who are mental colleagues, something that makes you grounded and keeps you in touch with reality is a good thing.
Such brilliant advice. Thank you again for your time and for the important work that you're doing with your clients and with people that you may never meet face to face too.
Thank you. And thank you for having me on the program. And thank you on the podcast. And thank you for doing this podcast to put message out there and to highlight, spotlight some of the brilliant things that are going on around.
Gosh, speaking to Dr. Ajayi was just like soul food. It was really, really lovely. I feel really privileged to have been able to have that conversation. And I hope that you found it useful for whatever reason that you are listening to or watching this, either because you work in mental health or because you might be male or be looking at trying to help support and better understand someone who is male. What an incredible job I do. What an incredible job he does. And please know that there are people like us who work close to you. So if you need care and support, if you need guidance and nurturance, there are people out there who can help you, who will get you, who will hear you, and can help make this different for you and those around you. I just love what I do. And if you love it too, please help me spread the word about this podcast. I look forward to bringing the next episode to you. Please do let me know what you think to the episodes. Come and connect with me on my social media. I am Dr. Marianne Trent everywhere. I will look forward to hearing what you think. And if you've got any ideas for future podcast episodes, please do let me know. And in the meantime, I hope you find the books useful, the Clinical Psychologist Collective, the Aspiring Psychologist Collective. And I will look forward to bringing the next episode of the podcast to you from 6 a.m. on Monday. Thanks for being part of my world. Take care.